Can we talk about Sinead O'Connor? This morning at 4:30 in the morning, I decided to Google cause of death. And what I found was that they didn't explain her cause of death, but what they did talk about, you didn't have to search it very far, is that Sinead has had a lot of childhood trauma. And she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she's been suicidal. I even saw someone on social media say, "Oh, poor thing." But there's something here we need to talk about. Sinead O'Connor died at 56 years old. She was born 5 months after I was. And I know what the world in America was like. I have no idea what it was like in Ireland. But in America, we're supposed to be, or we think we are, the progressive ones. And the truth is that when I was growing up, there was no understanding of what mental health needs were. Therapists were ridiculous. The first therapy that ever happened, family therapy, was in the 1950s, and it was still quite a baby by the time I was growing up, when Sinead was growing up, with physical abuse and sexual abuse. If there's any time ever, it's now to say that those kind of traumas live in the body. It's not borderline personality. It's not bipolar disorder. All of that stuff lives in our body and makes us feel so constantly afraid that everything our children do when they're growing up that breaks a rule or would have caused us to be harmed as a child ourselves puts fear in our body like the fear that we felt as a child. There's no doubt in my mind that that's what Sinead experienced. She experienced it probably as a result of people's strong reactions when she spoke her truth. She had 4 marriages. I've had 3. The only reason I don't have 4 is because I'm not married now to the partner I'm with. But I'll tell you that trauma responses show up in relationships. And kudos to her for not staying married very long. My relationships were very abusive, mirroring the things that I had learned in childhood to cope with and deal with, and have my relationship strategies be like the abusive people, because that's all I knew. That's what I learned growing up. In the 1970s when I was growing up, sure, we'd go outside and play all day and ride our bikes till dark and drink from the water hose. But we were also getting beaten up. Some of us being hurt. Nobody's asking questions when there's bruises. Nobody's asking questions when there's too much anxiety in a child to learn. It's not ADHD. Look at what's happening at home. So I know what that was like. Sinead got married when she was 21 the first time I was 23. And I'll tell you what, I left my mom's home thinking that that's what I needed to do for my happily ever after. And it's not what happened. All of the trauma that was in my body showed up in that marriage. It shows up in our work. It shows up in our art. It shows up everywhere. In fact, my little sister, I have a sister who was born 6 years after I was. She died this April of cancer. If you look at that adverse childhood experiences study, what you will learn is that the researchers have said the more things you have on the ACEs scale, the more likely you are to die an early death. Right now, the ACEs study is being used to try to start early childhood prevention, to try to be more aware, and kudos to them. But you know what? We don't know enough. The mental health field has not progressed. It has failed so many who get diagnosed and medicated as having bipolar disorder when it's really unhealed childhood trauma. I've seen it so many times. And that ACEs study says that if you have childhood trauma, and if you read the ACEs study, you'll see the things that they're marking as what they count, because research, you have to identify things that are countable. If you look at that, they'll say a score of 6 or more, I think, is predictive of an early death. But if you and I look at the ACEs test, and we read through those 10 things and say, well, you know what, I don't have 10, I only have 2 or 3, but I can list 2 handsfuls of other kinds of traumatic experiences that I had growing up. Yeah, my ACEs is higher than 6. My little sister watched me be abused by my mother. And my mom never really laid a hand on my sister until I left home at 18 because my mom had beat me for the last time. And that was the first time my sister got my mom's wrath. She dragged her around the house by her hair because she refused to clean her room. This is a mom who never taught us how to clean our rooms, but made cleaning something we had to do with terrible fear. Why am I saying this? Why am I speaking about this? Because one of the things that research has shown is that witnessing another child being harmed is as traumatic or more traumatic as being beaten yourself when you're a child. And my sister, who's dead now at the age of 50, watched it and then compensated by what my family taught. Just cover your emotions with food. And so she spent her entire life abusing her body, morbidly obese, full of inflammation, until cancer took her. So I get very upset. Sinead died of unknown causes is not true. The abuse that she took in childhood, spiritual abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and then the abuses that happened when she lost her child. You've got to understand that each one, and she had 4 children, so she trying to fight to get her children back. Those are trauma experiences that will live in our body, and they just stack on top of each other, getting more and more intense and more heavy. And the body, I'm even experiencing it. A month ago, I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic. I have asthma. My thyroid has always, I don't know, for 15 or 20 years, been in the crapper. I don't get trauma responses anymore, not very often. But now I'm living with the consequences and fighting for my life, because there are physical consequences that come from a childhood lifetime of trauma. And then those traumas repeat themselves. People around who have normally developed childhoods look at people who have childhood trauma and wonder, why are they that way? And I know that happened for Sinead when she tore the picture of the Pope. Wow, this person's unstable. No, they're not. They're in pain. They're in pain. Why am I talking about this? Because it needs to be said. And also, childhood trauma can heal. But there is so much bullshit out there when it comes to helping you heal. Just so much. I have started Trauma Free Nation, and that's the only way you can learn from me, unless you follow all of my videos on YouTube, where you can do your healing. But I tell you what, you have to advocate for yourself. You have to be your #1 advocate. And I'll tell you, don't reach out to me if you're in California or Utah and ask for trauma therapy from me, because I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not taking on any more clients. I'm 57 years old. And I'm learning how to make art. I'm learning to experience joy for the first freaking time in my life. But I'm going to always wear my hair like this from here on out. I've had it short before, but I'm wearing it short again because Sinead is my sister. Not literally. I was born in Barstow, California, and she was born somewhere in Ireland. But she's my sister. And it breaks my heart. And I think that a survivor of childhood trauma gets labeled and punished for things that they did not volunteer to go through. So, advocate for yourself. A friend of mine reached out after I made a little tiny video of this on social media. And she said that she was misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder and giving medication that is now having long-lasting effects on her body. And they would not listen to her when she said, this is unresolved trauma. Advocate for yourself. Don't let this broken system convince you that you have to die early or that you should give up because there's no one around to help. You, my sister, Sinead, will always be in my heart. Even though I'm off creating art, I'm not gonna pull my YouTube channel down. I'm gonna leave it there for you to heal. I'm not putting any more videos up because I deserve to experience joy, and thinking and feeling all the time about trauma does this to me. Please advocate for yourself. Let's live. Sinead fought for injustices, and I realized as I was crying this morning that I've been on the same mission, just in a different form. I'm determined to live to be an old woman, not to let the impact of my childhood traumas take me early, like it did for Sinead, like it did for Leanne. So please don't give up. Reach out, watch my videos on YouTube, learn how to heal. I'm in Trauma Free Nation, my community, once a week, answering questions, providing support if you need that. If you don't need it, don't join. I don't care. Just don't quit. I'm Tamara Ridge. Thank you for listening.